The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster by, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Still getting some calls and messages in regarding Gary Cobb, airport director, who was on a couple of days ago. Got through to some of those messages today. Next special on Mannin Line's next Wednesday. Teresa Cope, the chief exec of Manx Care, will be on, talking about Manx Care, their performance, hopes for the future. Has that nurses' dispute been solved yet? All sorts of things to talk about. That's next Wednesday. Teresa Cope will be on, the chief exec of Manx Care. Just getting to some of the messages from yesterday regarding taxis. Andrew dropped a note in just to say, why don't we get Uber to set up on the Isle of Man? Then we'd have no problem with taxis. You can get an Uber most places now in the UK, so surely that's the place to go. Well, there was talk, I think, a couple of years ago, maybe it was pre-COVID, somebody was setting up an app to link taxis together on the Isle of Man, but never really took off. And I don't know whether you know more about this than I do, but I've certainly not heard of Uber making any progress at all, or whether or not it would even be allowed, because they do have to be licensed. James dropped a note in the view of the incidence of electric vehicle fires. Should the fire service review the carrying of these vehicles on the car ferry, also in the car parks, and the increased weight by the relevant body as well? Car parks in blocks of flats and hotels. We don't want to be wise after the event. It was noted, I think, earlier on this year that two of the big blocks of flats on the Douglas Promenade have no capacity to put chargers in that the electrical circuitry within it, the grid, won't stand chargers. Certainly, I think it was Majestic Flats as well on Onken Head. They certainly initially said there was they couldn't put chargers on there. Certainly a significant number of chargers, or the fast chargers, that is. So we don't know, and nobody's really come up and said what the tolerance is for multi-storey car parks. If everybody's going to be parking an electric vehicle, and of course they are substantially heavier than fossil fuel ones, then what's the implication really for multi-storey car parks? Sometimes you can get a couple of hundred vehicles in a multi-storey car park. So what's going to happen if they're all electric? Again, James says, let's not be wise after the event. Can you ask those who've used the cabins on the Manxman if there were pillows and blankets available? There are rumours they aren't provided. Well, I can speak from personal experience. There certainly were blankets, certainly were pillows in the cabin I took on the Manxman, but certainly no blankets. Those famous steam packet blankets were missing. Whether or not they got plans for them, and also, my experience, there was no Wi-Fi. Well, there was a bit of free Wi-Fi, but that certainly got gobbled up. But there's no Wi-Fi available there, or none of those codes that you can get. You can purchase Wi-Fi, but maybe that's something that'll be sorted out. And a WhatsApp N985, listening to Gary Cobb yesterday, I was disappointed. Every answer he gave deflected to be somebody else's problem. The trouble with bringing directors over from the UK, they just toe the party line. Nothing to do with us. So really, it's time the operators of the airport have their own staff instead of contracting everything out. Gary Cobb inherits a mess from the other airport director, moved on. But what happens now? Well, thanks. That's your opinion. Thanks for that. But and it was mentioned several times that the situation inherited at the airport wasn't perfect. But there is a report into the future of the airport and what's going to happen, whether or not it remains within the responsibility of the Department of Infrastructure, or whether or not it is contracted out to a third party, an arm's length company, much like Steam Packet is. And Manx Care, for that matter, as well. Would that be the way to get everything? Certainly, we all know there are problems, there are issues, and we can look back with rose-tinted glasses and say things were better in the past. But times have changed, and we have to move. Time only moves one way. We have to move forward to the future. So let's hope that things improve. But we're all part of it. We're kind of part of the solution. Peter's on now. Hi. Hello, Peter.
Oh, hello. It's Peter Murcott, you probably guessed. And I'll give you one guess of what the subject is.
I'm guessing it will be the assisted dying bill.
Yes. Better called the assisted suicide bill, because that's what it's really about. Now, the point that I want to make is there are a lot of points, but you can't do that on Mannin Line. I'll keep to one. On May the 17th, 2023, Tynwald unanimously and enthusiastically endorsed the suicide prevention strategy. They then passed a motion whereby there had to be a report back to Tynwald in October as to how government departments and statutory boards were going to allocate their resources to help to forward the strategy, which aims to make suicide a thing of the past, if at all possible, which is a very commendable aim. That report came before Tynwald on the order paper on October the 15th. I obtained a copy, and I noted some quite significant sums were involved. I didn't understand all the charts and so on, but that doesn't matter. The fact is that it was reported back, and it naturally will cost public money. You have a bill coming up next Tuesday, which by Clause 16 of the explanatory memorandum, not my words, make it clear that that bill will cost public money. There has been some difficulty in conveying to people that the bill, despite its title, is about assisted suicide, because Clause 10 contains a provision that makes it clear that as long as the bill is followed, those who participate in the necessary stages of the bill would not be liable to a prosecution under the Criminal Law Act 1981, Section 2. Now, given that it is, therefore, about legalising assisted suicide under certain circumstances, because that's what it is, incontrovertibly, then how can you spend public money on making a provision whereby suicide is likely to increase because of the assistance, and yet spend public money wanting to make suicide a thing of the past? It is an impossible situation, as well as a wrong use of public money. And so, therefore, there's only one step that can be taken on Tuesday, given the fact that Tynwald unanimously, including all those who support the bill, agree with the suicide prevention strategy. Therefore, the rejection of the assisted dying bill, stroke suicide, will be just a formality on Tuesday, because it should be automatic. There's no need to send it to a select committee, because if the bill is wrong from the outset, then a select committee, by tinkering with the clauses, can't make it any better. The whole substance of it is completely contrary to what they've already agreed. That's the situation.
There is, I mean, as you say, it can appear somewhat self-contradictory. Really. It's a paradox, really, in that you have, on the one hand, we have this assisted, well, the official title is the Assisted Dying Bill, and as you say, on the other hand, there is a suicide prevention strategy. But I don't know whether you can follow the line or whether you can help me, Peter, but where did the tendency to what you call assisted suicide and assisted dying, where did this trajectory come from? Is it in the past 20-odd years?
Well, what I do know is that the bill bears a striking resemblance, or at least the purposes behind the bill, you know, the original reasons and the stages that were given for moving it, actually are very similar to what was going on in Jersey. And Jersey, interestingly, has suspended any further progression of a bill there until next autumn. The other interesting thing is I noticed in the discussion this morning that they were talking on Manx Radio that they were there's a person who's come over and who's, I believe, going to talk to the legislature and was talking about unbearable suffering. Now, that is notable for its absence in this bill. That's usually one of the reasons it is often advanced, and yet it's not referred to anywhere in the bill, nor in the motion to bring the bill in the first place. And so already, I think it's to be noticed that we've already moved several stages on before we've even got anything being passed in the first place. But I don't know where the phrase came from, assisted dying. I do know this, that if somebody wanted to insist, as some seem to want to do, that assisted dying is not assisted suicide, and they seem to want to assist that, then if they were to take out Clause 10 from the bill and then were to follow the bill, to do all the things it passed into law, everybody who participated would be wide open to a prosecution for aiding and abetting a suicide, and it carries 14 years imprisonment. So no one, I would have thought, would be silly enough to do that. So they really cannot continue with this argument that it isn't effectively assisted suicide. And as I explained once before, the title to a bill does not determine the legality, what the legal contents are. A court does not take any notice particularly of the title because it's just a nickname. It's the content of the bill that determines what its legal effect is. And the content is very, very clear on that point. There's no argument about it, except where people seem to want to try and maintain a fiction.
Peter, words are extremely important, and I just wanted to get your reasoning when you insist that this is an assisted suicide bill.
Yep.
And the other people, the people who propose this, maintain it's an assisted dying bill. Now, suicide, can be a very pejorative term sometimes, so you stick to that rigidly, I've noticed.
Well, you have to, in law, you have to specify what you're talking about. And I'm not saying anything that isn't down in Clause 10. Clause 10 actually says abetment of suicide, not my words. And of course, in law, you spell out exactly what you're talking about. You can't just pussyfoot over it. You've got to try and be as plain as you can. If you don't do that, then you lead to hours of legal argument in front of the courts, who then have got to decide what the words do mean. So the person who drafted the bill quite understandably realised and knew that this bill was essentially about helping someone to die if A gives assistance to B to help B to kill himself. A has assisted B to commit suicide. Now, to commit suicide is not an offence. That was abolished in 1981 in the Isle of Man, and that was when they created this primary offence of aiding and abetting a suicide, and because it didn't exist in statute law before then, to the best of my knowledge. So really, it's down to when you're talking about making law, and that's what the Keys is talking about, you've got to call a spade a spade. You cannot just pussyfoot around and try and pretend it's something else. You've got to be quite plain. And I would have more respect if people would actually admit and say in so many words what the legal reality is, because then we could have this debate. But I sense that they realise this complete contradiction, and that, quite frankly, the legislature is in a position where it's either got to rescind everything it said about supporting the Public Health Directorate's assisted suicide strategy, or it's got to reject the bill. It cannot do both, because it then raises the question that the public, quite rightly, could be asking, well, why are you spending our money, and in fact wasting our money, on two contradictory things?
Okay.
And it's a very simple proposition.
All right. Thanks, Peter. Good to hear from you.
Thank you very much.
Good to hear. Thanks for that. I want to go to Julie now. Hi, Julie.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Okay. What's your opinion of this situation?
Oh, Well, I'm actually on both sides because I am a suicide prevention officer, so I've been trained in suicide first aid. So I totally understand where the prevention of suicide needs to be addressed over here. You know, we are losing so many, and this is the key word, young people to suicide. These are young, healthy people who can see no other way out, and that's when they're going in and, you know, taking their own lives. That is absolutely nothing at all to do with assisted dying. Assisted dying, I did lots and lots of research about this when I have a friend who is from Holland, and they have assisted dying over in Holland. So with him, we translated all of the documents, and they were forwarded to members of the government, so they've seen them too. But over there, what you have to, and it'll be the same over here, you have to have an illness that there's no way out. And you are going to, in some cases, and certainly, I mean, I have personal experience of this, where a friend of mine who was only in his 50s developed prostate cancer. He went through chemo, he went through surgery and everything over a period of about 2 years to the point where the doctor said, there is nothing more we can do for you. He wasn't a smoker. He did regular exercise. He was fit and healthy. That man took 3 months to die because he basically had to starve to death because there was nothing anybody could do to help him. The pain relief is okay in the beginning, then that wears off. It has no effect. So he died, and when he finally went, you could actually put your hand around his ankles. They were so thin because he was, other than the cancer, he was a healthy, you know, sort of youngish, you know, adult. And so to put that into the prevention of suicide, where we are trying to stop, you know, 20-year-olds, the young man, you know, only a couple of weeks ago, he would not have been eligible to go and have assisted dying. He wouldn't be able to get 2 doctors. It quite clearly states that you have to be within 6 months of death, and that 2 doctors have to tell you there is no further treatment for you. Speak to anybody at hospice.
Okay, so Julie, what about the thought then that, and you'll know this if you're dealing with suicide prevention, that when people are in a bottomless, dark pit of despair, they often don't think rationally. So
no,
if they witness the fact that there is something that will be called, let's say, I mean, it's state sponsored, because if it's a law of Tynwald, the state will have sanctioned it, whereby people can end their lives. I'm not saying this will be the case, but sometimes people whose thinking is not, you know, along the lines that everyone else is, they may just see, well, the state's allowing people to end their own lives. Why shouldn't I do it with mine?
But if they're in that bottomless pit anyway, there is no way of bringing them back out. But what they won't be able to do is go and get a bus ticket and pop along, you know, to the doctor's surgery and have a doctor put them down. I mean, I know Peter called it suicide. I actually, in my head, still call it euthanasia, because it's like, you know, I mean, you have, a lot of us have been to a point, you know, where we think there's no return, but you can't, it's not a free for all. You have to, if you read the legislation, you have to have a terminal illness. You have to have at some point in a previous time, for example, myself, you know, I've told my children, if I get to the state where I am in pain and I do not, you know, there's no coming back for it, I will be choosing to end my life rather than have them watch me suffering.
And what did they say to that, Julie?
They're absolutely 100% behind it. They don't want. They remember the pain I went through watching my friend. I mean, they were only quite young at the time, and it got to the stage where they could not go and visit anymore because I could not bear them to have that was the memory that they had, of this dear friend of ours. And to watch somebody die when there is not, I don't care what anybody says, morphine, all of the rest of it does not take away that pain after you've had that for, any length of time. He couldn't swallow, he couldn't speak. They were talking yesterday on the radio about, your eyes smiling at people. It was Alex and can't remember now, but anyway, they were talking about that, and that brought back memories of me sitting next to his bed in the hospice, looking at his eyes, and his eyes were saying, "Help me, do something to help me." And there was nothing we could do. This is not about having grannies put down. This is about young, often, people in their 50s and 60s who have developed an illness and it is incurable. There's no way back from it.
All right, Julie, I appreciate that. Thanks for calling today.
No problem. You take care.
Good to
Bye-bye.
hear from you. Let's. Julian's with us now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. I've just been listening to the lady before. I just wonder what her take is on a recent Daily Mail headline titled "Canada to Legalise Euthanasia for Drug Addicts with No Other Illness in March." And the first paragraph of that article reads, "Canada is due to legalise euthanasia for people addicted to drugs next year, in a move activists are comparing to eugenics. When the country's law around medically assisted dying or made changes in March 2024, mental health patients, including those with substance abuse issues with no physical ailments, will be able to seek assisted suicide." And if anyone thinks that Canada is not relevant, it's probably worth remembering that they are a Commonwealth country and they did receive royal assent from the UK monarch. So I think it's quite relevant, really.
I think it's March 2024 they're introducing that. There'll be people with no physical ailments, but those suffering from mental illnesses will be eligible for this.
That's right. So there is the worry that you will have that secondary legislation, which no government can tie the hands of a future government, and that is the problem. We've had this conversation a few times. I totally see why people make the case for it, but then you have to make the case, I think, some people might say I'm irrelevant for saying it, but, there's plenty of people that probably should have the death penalty in the UK, but we don't do it because of mistakes that were made in the past. And I think it's useful to remember that if you just look up "do not resuscitate" without consent, there's been loads of those over the last few years, and you think the same system, the administration that would carry out assisted dying, there are a ton of people that have got "do not resuscitate" on their records, and they don't even know about it. And that is very, very clearly something that you have to give consent for. So, you know what I'm saying? It's if there's don't want to do this because of any possible mistakes, what is going on in the background in that same administration?
Okay, so just for the record, Julian, what's your opinion on the assisted dying legislation that's being introduced through Tynwald? Should it be enacted? Do you agree with it?
Well, there was a consultancy, wasn't there? And there was a slim majority said we don't want it. So, with anything else, if you're going down that road, I don't even quite understand why it's going through now. If there has been a communication with the Manx public and they basically said, a slim majority said we don't want it. Well, some people within the assisted dying fraternity are saying that the majority want it. Well, we just had a consultancy. So it seems strange that it's sort of almost been steamrolled through when actually there has been a vote effectively without having a proper referendum of sorts.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Julian.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
Good to hear from you. Well, this is the story. It's about Canada, actually, and it's something called MAID, M-A-I-D, Medical Assistance in Dying. There is a program in Canada which, if Canadians who are eligible for it, if they have a grievous or irremediable medical condition, such as a serious physical illness or disability, and if their conditions put them in an advanced state of irreversible decline and causing enduring physical and psychological suffering, they may require request to be allowed euthanasia. They call it euthanasia in Canada. A doctor will actively end that person's life, while MAID covers both euthanasia and assisted suicide. Almost all MAID deaths in Canada are carried out by a doctor. It's a really heavy subject. I'll be honest with you, I'm not comfortable about talking about this. But it's something that's being introduced. Dr. Allinson's bill is going through Tynwald at the moment, and it may be, and Dr. Allinson has assured everyone that safeguards are in there. You have to be a resident on the Isle of Man for 2 years, and the cause of death on the death certificate will be the condition under which the person says they can no longer live. And they've also talked about life insurance paying out. It's a changing world, isn't it?
Have you been invited to take part in the Household Income and Expenditure Survey? It's one of the most important surveys for our island because the information you provide is vital data for our island's financial planning. It helps us calculate our VAT revenue from the UK. Plus, it gives us a better understanding of the financial strains on residents, so we can support those who are struggling. If you've been invited, please take part. Visit gov.im/HIES for more information.
Spectrum Windows. If your house needs a new look and your windows letting rain, keep those cold breezes out and make it look like new again. Spectrum Windows, Spectrum Windows. Quality through and through. Great work guaranteed to you. Spectrum Windows, Spectrum Windows. Spectrum Windows.
Hello, I'd like to rent a car for 3 days. Just something reasonable.
No problem at all. We've just got a few rules to make you aware of. You can't go off island, you can't smile in the car, you can't take any friends, it's £10,000 a day, and you'll need £1 million deposit up front. Any questions?
Renting a car doesn't need to be so difficult or expensive. With prices from just £50 per day, speak to Rex Rental Company or book online at rexrental.im.
Rex Rentals. I'm so glad to hear that.
Today, Manx Petroleum keeps our island moving. For the drivers, for the school runners, for the deliverers, and the adrenaline seekers. Today and every day, the island's longest-serving distributor will be powering thousands of journeys with our premium road fuels. Manx Petroleum, always here for you. Fill up now or visit mp.im.
Get ready for another winning weekend on Manx Radio.
And this weekend, a staycation package at Ramsey Park Hotel could be yours. This includes an overnight stay, dinner and live entertainment from Mamma Mia tribute The Dynamos, all happening on Saturday the 6th of January.
Visit manxradio.com and answer the competition question for your chance to win. You can enter as many times as you like.
Then make sure you join us for Manx Radio Breakfast on Monday morning when you'll find out if you're the lucky winner.
Make this your winning weekend with your nation station, Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
25 to 1. Thanks for dropping by today. And Andrew's with us now. Hi, Andrew.
Hi. Like yourself, I am not comfortable with this subject, but has anybody considered how the feelings are going to be of the person who has to assist the suicide? I'm a former train driver on the British Rail network, and I've had to deal with several cases of suicide. In fact, I did have one myself. It's not a pleasant experience. Has anyone really considered how the doctors are going to feel?
Well, there was a survey. The Isle of Man Medical Society did a survey, and they reckon 34% of doctors could leave the island if this, because obviously doctors, they say, aren't just bystanders; they're part of the delivery of it. Yes, that's my point. You've got to consider the people delivering. Whether I don't say don't commit suicide, but don't involve other people is my feeling. It's an uncomfortable question, but I'm going to ask it because I know people will be thinking this. So you were driving a train when somebody walked in front of it?
Yes. I'm doing 90 mile an hour. And I didn't see them till the very, very last second. I stopped a mile and a quarter further up the line.
And can you remember how you felt?
Well, basically, it finished my driving career on British Rail. I just couldn't stomach that sort of speed again. I just wish that the person concerned had got to the trackside a minute later, or I had been stopped somewhere just approaching, so I would have seen them in plenty of time. But, 90 mile an hour, you take 10 seconds to cover a quarter of a mile, and they step out from behind a bridge, yards sort of in front of you.
So what do you think about this proposed assisted dying legislation on the island, Andrew?
I don't like it. No, because you're having to involve other people, and they've got to live with what they're doing. I had to live with what happened to my train. It's not a pleasant subject.
All right. Andrew, I appreciate your call today. I know it's taken a lot for you to call us, but thanks for calling.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Neil's on now. Hi, Neil.
Good afternoon, Andy. I can actually see both aspects of this debate. My late elderly father had a huge stroke at the age of 86 and was unconscious for 2 years, which he certainly wouldn't have wanted. On the other hand, my late mother, who lived also to a very ripe old age, she had debilitating osteoporosis, and in the end she was literally sort of very slow moving around. But my brothers and I collectively made the decision that we would care for her as long as we possibly could, and she was able to remain at home. It was a team effort, but making that effort can be hard at times. I was up at 4:30 in the morning and running through late at night. My brothers would call in and check that everything was okay. And my mother had a very good network of friends from her local church who would pop in every day and make sure that she was okay. But I think there are aspects of this bill which make me feel that it's just another example of our throwaway society. I think we have no value for the countryside. We have no value for animals. We have no value for the things we buy anymore. We throw everything away. And I think just throwing life away is a step too far for me. I can understand somebody wanting to take their own life if they're in severe pain, and there are methods by which anybody could do that. But I think this is just an aspect of a throwaway society.
Why do you think, obviously Dr. Allinson is a GP of long standing. He's seen every aspect of life from birth through to death many, many times. Why do you think Dr. Allinson feels this is a relevant piece of legislation?
I honestly don't know. I'm sure there's a huge lobby out there for this sort of selected suicide and somebody assisting you, and I can understand that. But at the same time, we have a society which really doesn't want to care about elderly people. I know a significant number of people who, when their parents or their grandparents get elderly, they're quite content to just push them into a care home and forget about them. And I think that that's a very, very sad aspect of life. I come from a very traditional family, and when my grandfather was widowed, my grandfather moved in with us. We were a family of 5 lads, and my grandfather moved in with us. And my mother sort of cared for him as much as she cared for us, and that was the way I think life should be. It's just this throwaway society thing which I really hate. It's appalling. And as I've said, it can be tough caring for somebody later in life if they're not fully mobile, but they still have a cheerful disposition and still value life. My mother ended up really valuing just looking through the window, seeing the birds on her feeders, and possibly getting down the garden with a bit of help from my brothers and I. And although the quality of life narrows in, there is still a quality of life right to the very end. And I think throwing and disvaluing life the way we do is just appalling in this age, to be frank.
And that's a very pertinent point, and that is the quality of life. That's a very subjective thing, isn't it, Neil?
It is a subjective thing, but I mean, my mother was a very vibrant person. She sort of liked to be involved in many social things and out and about, and gradually that aspect of her life had to narrow down. But I think as you slow down and you narrow down in life, you gain pleasure from some of the much smaller things, like just having a walk down the garden, seeing what's in bloom or what vegetables are there, friends calling just for a cup of tea and a chat. And she was very lucky. She had a very good network of friends, particularly from her local church, who would pop in. And I think this throwing away of life just because it's an inconvenience, I think that's a step too far. And I think this will just encourage people, for their families, to say, hang on, mother, you're slowing down. You know, it's a bit of a drain, when actually the drain is on them and not the person who's on the receiving end of it, and pressurize people to say, you know, okay, let's call it a day. But we need to value life, Andy. That's my view, to be frank.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Neil.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
All right, 17 minutes before 1. Juan's on now. Hi, Juan.
Hey, how are you, Andy?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Just a bit of housekeeping on yesterday. First of all, big shout out to Graham, the White Van Man, on Politics page, who said that I talk a load of word beginning with S, and it wasn't sense. So, you know, but I'm glad he's listening in, Andy. Get him to pick the phone up and join in, eh? What about that? Keyboard warriors. The assisted dying, and there's so many points relative to assisted dying for people, but I think, as Julian pointed out, and I think he was on this a year ago, what was happening in Canada, and now this stuff is actually starting to come through. So it's be careful what you wish for with some of these things, and it's going to be down to the government to tie this down so we can't get any secondary legislation through if they're going to go ahead with this. It's a very, very, very difficult subject. And of course, all the other stuff comes into it as well. And I keep saying follow the money trail. I mean, the massive amount of money that's out in body parts is unreal. When I looked into the pricing of body parts, it's absolutely amazingly fantastic business. So all that comes into play as well when we talk about this stuff. So it's all something to bring in mind. Yesterday I was halfway through, and we finished at the end of the program there. The report that was issued, I just wanted to go through a few bits that I didn't put out there, Andy. This was from Florida Health, and it's from the State Surgeon General of Florida. Florida, as we know, is a big state with quite a lot of people there. And this is put out to service care providers, health providers. This is not for the public. This is for health providers. And I just wanted to go through them couple of points that I didn't bring out yesterday. And I'm not a medical person, so I'm just relaying information from the Florida State Surgeon. And there was the 3 points I was putting out. The mRNA COVID vaccine presents a risk of subclinical and clinical myocarditis and other cardiovascular conditions among otherwise healthy individuals. There is unknown risk of potential adverse impacts with each additional dose of the mRNA COVID-19 vaccine. Currently, individuals may have received 5 or 7 doses and counting of this vaccine over a 3-year period. Elevated levels of spike protein in the mRNA COVID-19 vaccine persist among some individuals for an infinite period of time, which may carry health risks. So on the footnote of it, improving habits and overall health and management to reduce risks of serious health problems. Staying physically active, minimizing processed foods, maximizing vegetables and healthy fats, and lastly but not least, spending time outside and support necessarily with vitamin D levels. There's a thing we've been brought on here a few times.
Many, many times. Of course, nobody's short of vitamin D in Florida, are they?
No, they're not. They're not. And you know, Julian's been on about it. I've been on about it right from day one, about the evidence that was out there that was suppressed. And it's just nice to see that these people are starting to come around, and these are actual stated facts now. Florida State Surgeon Joseph Latapo, MD and PhD, just in case anyone thinks that he's just a keyboard warrior. So we're always looking for factual stuff. I'm just glad that it's there. I just wanted to share it with people, that this is happening in other parts of the world. This information's coming out. So that's it, really, Andy. I just wanted to pass that out there.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Stu.
Take care, Andy.
All right, 13 minutes now before 1.
Come on. Oh, not again. We need to go to Athol.
They only do Nissan.
Oh, don't be daft. They service and repair all makes and models.
Main dealer prices, though.
Our Nathan says it's not just about the cost per hour, as what one technician does in 3 hours, Athol might do in 1. And you get a courtesy vehicle.
Look at that. Told you we needed to come to Athol.
Oh, be quiet and drive.
Are you concerned about your eye health? Holmes & Davidson Opticians in Douglas are proud to offer the Eidon Ultra-Wide Field Retinal Imaging and Heidelberg 4D OCT systems. State-of-the-art machines that allow early detection and management of eye diseases. Don't wait. Book your appointment today and ensure the health of your eyes with the best technology available. Call 676 230 or visit holmesanddavidsonopticians.co.uk now.
Walk through the northern lights into a land of ice and snow at Ramsey Garden Centre. Indoor and outdoor lights, a magical range of real and artificial trees, decorations, gifts and much more. Christmas at Ramsey Garden Centre, Albert Road.
Looking for a great night out? Something a little different? Then join us at Mannin Hotel as we pay tribute to some of the best music acts in the world. See in the new year in style with the Sensations and David Castro on Sunday the 31st of December. For only £195 per couple, enjoy a night of your favourite music, a 3-course a la carte dinner, plus overnight stay and breakfast. Book now. Visit manninhotel.im or call 602 555.
Option A is not too far away, and all this week on Manx Radio you can be a winner as we play The Devil is in the Detail.
All you have to do is go to manxradio.com and work out our Devil in Disguise. There'll be a different one each day, and at the end of the week we'll give away a Option A hamper from ShopRite, crammed full of spooktacular goodies just in time for the 31st of October.
The Devil is in the Detail. Play now for your chance to win at manxradio.com.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
And Fiona. Hello, Fiona.
Hello, Andy. Sorry, bit of a frog in my throat. Yeah, I just felt I had to phone in about the assisted dying bill. I practiced as a clinical psychologist for 35 years, and I also practiced here as well, being from the Isle of Man. I did the suicide course too. In the course of 36 years and treating people with depression, not with pills, but with therapy, cognitive therapy, obviously I saw many people who were very depressed and people who are suicidal. I just want to clarify a few things because I listen to people saying things which I think are actually quite confused. Number one, I think there'd be very strict criteria for the application of assisted dying. And you know, nobody does that lightly. But people are suffering. People are suffering from terminal physical illness. People are dying extremely slowly and often just want to exit. Often they've just had enough. And I think in chronic situations where there's no treatment, they're not going to get better, be it physical or be it mental. And there are people... Well, to just give a personal edge, my poor brother's partner hung herself here on the island because she had bipolar, which was chronic. She had multiple suicide attempts, and nobody could treat her or get her better. She had loads of psychiatry, everything. So she very bravely and tragically, but she had to escape. And in her suicide letter, she said, "It has been utterly unbearable." Now, that's an extreme example, but there are people, for whatever reason, don't want to live anymore. Now, yeah, and it's hard to commit suicide. It's very hard. But
and I think Fiona, the people listening to this will, and personally, I'd like to know when hope finishes and despair takes over, because surely hope springs eternal. Surely,
not for some people.
Oh, really?
I agree that in many cases you can save people because you get them through a depression and they get better. And you don't want them to commit suicide while they're ill. But I'm talking about chronically and terminally ill people who are dying. And I think, as I say, the whole point of having this is because you care about people. There was someone phoned in and went on about his mother enjoying life, didn't do much but watch the birds. I can agree with that. I enjoy watching the birds. But she had some quality of life, and it's not for someone else to judge. And of course, you didn't want to bung her in a care home and, or terminate her life. We're not talking about that at all. And I think it's about alleviating the suffering for chronically ill people who really have had enough. And it's compassion. You're coming from a place of compassion, which I'm sure Dr. Allinson is coming from that place too. And I just want to say that I think Peter, who rang in, was really mudging the waters and getting things conceptually confused, because suicide is an emotive term, like you said. And that is not quite the same. I think suicide can cover all sorts of different people. And it's very sad when it's a young person. But we're not talking about using assisted dying for people who could get better. So I just wanted to phone in and say, I think people get alarmed, and I think you've got to really be clear that, that people, you can't assume that life sometimes becomes unbearable for people, and there can be no hope because if they're chronically or terminally ill, physically or mentally, then if they just want out. And it's very hard to watch someone slowly starving to death in a care home. People with dementia who can't swallow, who can't talk, who can't move, and they're very slowly dying. And I'll just add, my uncle, Dr. Hugh Revel, started hospice over here years ago, and he was the kindest and most passionate of GPs. And it's about helping people.
Okay.
That's what it's about. Okay.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate your call
Andy?
today. Thanks for that. Really appreciate your point of view. Now, and Mark's with us. Hi, Mark.
Hi there. So yeah, pretty much similar to the last caller. It was a bit of a personal one for me. This is something like not actually involved fighting. I'd say to anyone that is worried about this being used for suicide, then they need to attend to the meetings on this, because I feel like I'm hearing a lot of ill-educated opinions on the matter. One of the things that I was told by it, because unfortunately I missed the meeting, is that this is purely for people who are terminally ill. So in my case, my stepdad was diagnosed with MND, and he had a particularly aggressive form for about the last 8 to 12 months of his life. He was paralysed from the neck down. He had no quality of life, particularly in the last few months of his life. He was constantly in pain, as another caller described. To a point where no manner of pain relief was helping. If they gave him any more, he would quite literally been comatose. And That is what this is for, and it is stipulated early on in the bill, which is why they're calling it assisted dying. This is not assisted suicide. This is assisted dying to people who are suffering. And that has got to be very much beared in mind, I think, when people are commenting on this factor and how they form speculating an opinion.
Okay.
I know a caller earlier was saying about the legislation factor. My suggestion would be, if he sounded quite informed on that as a legislation, that he should get involved in those meetings and make sure they are adjusted appropriately.
Okay. All right, Mark, I'm sorry, we're out of time, Mark, but we appreciate that call. Thanks for that. Thanks to everybody who called in today. Lots of very personal stories. I'll just reiterate, I'm really uncomfortable doing programs like this, but it's something we have to talk about. The legislation is working its way through Tynwald, and it could be a fact of our lives sooner rather than later. If you want to get in touch out of hours, email manninline@manxradio.com, call the answer phone on 682-631. Thanks to Ben Hartley on the phones today. Christy and Howie live from Ramsey Garden Centre after the news at 1.
WINT